Okay, welcome back, people. So I know we've been at this for about an hour. But now's the exciting time, now that we have a smaller group, actually. First, I would like to sort of hear back from your experiences with Miro, because as I mentioned, this is a bit of a pilot run. Do we use this kind of thing in the future? Second of all, I'd like to talk a little bit about what you guys experienced in talking, because I think there's some projects that we should delve into. And Sean, who's joined us, has some insights in terms of and ideas already around framing and looking at context. So first, let's start with Miro. How did people find the experience? Clearly frustrating because we lost a number of people.
Seriously, we lost a number of people? Okay. I used Miro before, so I think it's a good tool. It's just like you have to understand how to zoom in and out and how to find your way. So let me see.
I see that Angela has given us some feedback that it was laggy, data heavy, and there is definitely a first. Would you, if those that are left, would you be open to using it again?
Yeah, I would. I actually never used it before, and I found it as a good collaborative tool. But the problem for us was more so than the app was direction in terms of what the instruction was.
Okay, so we can work that. So Chris, are you taking notes on this?
Yep, I've done my own trial through Fire, and I think yeah, instructions are easy to check off. I'm more worried about the lagginess, or if it doesn't work for some people, then they're left out of the conversation. I'll take it into consideration, and we'll see if it's trying to, it's too much of a solution for maybe a problem that doesn't exist.
Fair enough. So now why don't we start a little bit of a discussion about the actual instructions and the purpose of this, because our goal is to figure out how we can help you move your projects forward. And I was in the first room, so if maybe we can start talking about, if you don't mind, Sharon, your project and some of the things we've been talking about in terms of framing it with the context and other, I think, strengths and weaknesses and strategy. Would you mind? Because I think Sean had some interesting insights.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Do you want me to start, or do you want to summarize?
Yeah, why don't you summarize what you're looking at?
Okay, so I'm working on developing an educational app for that is related to pressure injury prevention and management. So up to 90% of individuals living with spinal cord injury will develop a pressure injury at one point in their lifetime. And there are apps available on the market right now for pressure injury, but they've primarily been developed for healthcare professionals. There aren't as many apps available out in the market for end users who are at risk of or living with a pressure injury. So my app is currently it's in development, and my some of the strengths is I do have previous experience in app development. I have knowledge. I'm a healthcare professional with research background in pressure injury, and I've also interviewed healthcare professionals, individuals with lived experience, and caregivers who have looked after individuals with pressure injuries to understand what their educational needs are. The weaknesses are that this isn't very monetizing for end users, I guess. That's kind of the thing that We talked about,
Well,
so,
how about we structure it? One of the weaknesses right now is we haven't found a viable business model yet.
okay, so we haven't found a viable business model yet, but we will. But Sean gave some excellent suggestions, and I took them. I was writing them down on my phone while he was chatting. So Sean, do you maybe want to, or um, do you want to maybe jump in at this point, or should I just keep going?
Well, why don't you cover a little bit about, so we've covered your strengths, we've covered your weaknesses. What are the, let's talk about threats first and then opportunities, because I think that's where Sean comes in.
Okay, so the threats are there may be other apps on the market. Let me just go to my the mirror board. Yeah, so the existing apps are a competition, but the opportunities that we mentioned were potentially selling subscriptions, perhaps to HMOs or suppliers of wound care products, or um, so that they could actually, or even hospitals, that if perhaps they reduce their, I don't know, incidence of pressure injuries, there could be some revenue that comes back towards the app. Did I capture that well? I think okay.
So that's perfect. So for room one, that was kind of the idea of the exercise as we looked at those things, but now we can brainstorm together some of the strategies. So Sean was really good at saying, okay, if one of the weaknesses is we don't have a revenue stream, how can we think around a strategy? What are the opportunities? So one of the opportunities he mentioned is to go to healthcare providers, the nurses or healthcare professionals, whether in hospitals or for community care or home care, that address issues of pressure sores or pressure ulcers.
Yeah, and if I may interject really quick, Joseph.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really kind of looking at the tracking and management of ulcer care for the home care agencies that require tracking and reporting, and supplementing what they're doing kind of manually by interjecting this app that's driven through the client. So it would be still client owned, client run, but providing a additional value to reporting back for the healthcare providing agencies, such as like home care, long-term care, nursing SWAT units, all of those kind of things. And then an additional add value would be providing advertising and information support to the beneficiaries on what things they could use to treat their wounds, what products are available, as well as different like techniques and, you know, things that they can incorporate into maybe their diet. Like there's a lot of nutritionists now who work with people who have limited mobility on specific things, such as, you know, interjecting aspects of dietary control to help mitigate, you know, blood ulcers or bowel routines or any of those kind of things as well. So by giving them a platform to kind of directly speak, there's a monetary opportunity there too.
So the other thing I was thinking about, and then we can move on to some of the other rooms and then come back to this, is partnering. So I'm always kind of in favor of collaboration and value added. So for example, there are a number of startups or ideas even within this challenge of people that are looking at devices or ways of addressing pressure sores. What if the app that you're trying to develop was partnered in with a delivery system? Or, I mean, that's one thing. Or perhaps you could look at other companies that deliver products already, whether beds or wheelchairs or other things, where your app becomes a value added or a selling tool for them. So it makes sense for them to invest in its development and distribution.
That's amazing. Thank you. Both of you, thank you.
So room two, what were you guys discussing?
Well, I mean, I was pretty confused from the start about what to do with this program, or with like whatever it was called, because it was my first time ever even using it. But I did assume that we had to like focus on a SWOT analysis for the project and like what our company is doing. So from what I gathered is like with the strengths, I was like looking at how my device, like how my company's device, it's portable, it's easy to use, it's cost efficient. It targets strengthening the neck region for people who are are in different fields. I mean, in addition to this course, I'm doing like in addition to these meetings, I'm doing an accelerator course, and we're learning about customer segments and value propositions and everything. And as much as they keep trying to say, okay, we have to have like a customer segment of like maybe 2 to 3 people, like groups, I disagree of that due to looking at the context of how severe neck pain and neck soreness is in society, whether it's people looking at their phones, looking at their tablets, looking at their computers, degenerative disc disease, osteo and rheumatoid arthritis, concussions. So, I mean,
But
you can try to like limit down and say, okay, yeah, like have 2 or 3 like segments, but
okay.
when
So maybe that's actually a weakness that you have within your project or venture, is that not that there are a lot of different use cases and potential customers. So, and it's both a blessing and a weakness.
Yeah.
In a sense. It's both strength and weakness. Not being able to narrow down on a customer segment can also be a disadvantage, because you can't target your messaging or your marketing or your distribution, or even your exercise sort of regime. Because if you're selling the magic bullet that will help everybody, you may help nobody, because people can not hear about it, doubt it. So it's a strength and a weakness very much.
no, and I agree. Like for instance, the main like one of the things that I've been doing for the last, I want to say, almost a year actually, is gathering contacts and information. Like, I mean, I'm based out of Quebec, and what we call our CCTTs, so basically research institute, like collegiate college research institutes, and I have one project about to start in July, which is for proof of validation. That way they could test out like the population in about 150 like subjects, all ranging in different areas. That way, when that's done, it's not just like, okay, it's people who suffer from office, like from neck pain from office work, but it's people who suffer from neck pain from office work, degenerative disc disease, arthritis, pregnant, like people um, like women who have just given birth, who are breastfeeding, all these things. And I mean, that will assist in having like a proper targeted advertisement for me to go out and say, okay, yeah, like I could build a proper like advertisement video to say, okay, like this device exists for all like for these segments. But I do understand where you're coming from with like having too many customer segments, because the more segments that you have, then you get very stressed on, okay, like how do you take care of how do you get your message out to 10 different customer segments when it's easier just to get it up to 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge, and yeah, that I think that's figuring some of that context is very important. Were there other projects in your room that was discussed, or that you guys focused on that?
Like, I mean, like we really just focused on like I really just focused on mine because everybody else, like, I mean, like everybody's here more just to like learn about I guess like cervical, like there's more here to learn about like spinal issues or learn more from the discussions than anything else.
Okay, what about group 3 then?
Okay, so I think I can talk. So as I told my roommates, my activity spinal cord injury is more about assessment of risk of fracture. So we talk about an idea that I'm doing for another population, so a population with osteoporotic vertebral fracture, that I think that could potentially be applicable to people with spinal cord injury as well. So I think that I can lead on with that. So basically, we are designing a multi-component home delivered intervention delivered virtually to address pain, targeting pain management, exercise, in nutrition for people that have an osteoporotic vertebral fracture. And so I think that the strength of this project is that we are based this intervention on the needs that have been previously identified by guidelines, systematic review, barrier and facilitator assessment of barriers and facilitators that was led by my lab based on the KTA cycle, knowledge to action cycle. And another strength is that we are conducting a user consultation process. So we're gathering the opinion of people with vertebral fractures and healthcare practitioners with an expertise in treating people with vertebral fracture about their perspectives, what they think that should be the priority, barriers, facilitators, what we should include in our intervention. And as opportunities, I would say that since this will be a pilot feasibility study, there will be then the opportunity to implement it on a larger scale and to maybe do a randomized control trial. And there's also the opportunity that can be, if effective, it could be implemented on a larger scale in our territory. And also the opportunity that it can be done at home by the participants at their own time when they want and whatever. About the weaknesses, I can say that there is no funding to provide our technology device like an iPad or a computer or whatever with already the video there. And so there is not the possibility to do that as a video conference. That, by the way, there has been a trial that came out this morning about a similar video conference exercise program for people with spinal cord injury that showed promising results. So we cannot do that because we don't have funding to do a video conference kind of delivered intervention. And we don't have funding to have an healthcare practitioner that comes once a week or once a month to the participants' homes to do assessments or what else. And about threats, I would say that the barriers of technology might be an important threat to this study because not all the people that are of a certain age might be able to use an iPhone or an iPad or an Android or whatever. There are promising results, again, in other population with hyperkyphosis, in other kind of population, but there were still some participants that reported some difficulties. And then also say that there are other problems like fear of falling or adherence, because many people would say that they didn't have time, or for other reasons they want maybe exercise and follow intervention. So that's kind of.
So what I'm hearing, actually, just to extrapolate, is that as part of this challenge, or as part of the Praxis ideation challenge, we need to do several things. I think the one that I've heard from two groups is to run some sort of, I don't want to say workshop, but a support group for transitioning from research into commercializable concepts. So it sounds like between Sharon and Matteo, one of the challenges, and we see this quite often in our incubator, and what we do is shifting the mentality from a research mindset to how am I going to fund this mindset. And that is a really, really big challenge, because universities or research centers or places are good at teaching people to do research and more studies, but funding those studies from a business perspective is very hard. So maybe instead of like a context group like this, our education offerings in the next round, or even in this one, if people are interested, is maybe we need to set up a discussion around how do you adapt research, and how do you move research, because there are people that will pay for studies, but only if those studies are going to lead to commercializing a product or a service for them that will benefit them. So figuring out how do you position your idea as something that could be supported by either a company or a grant that leads to an outcome is a good lesson. The other thing that I think is important that I came from is how do we collaborate? So Sharon, for example, there are a number of groups that are working on, that have proposed different interventions for pressure ulcers. And maybe it's about working together to have a unified offering that includes education and prevention and treatment and monitoring in one group. So rather than individual projects, there may be some way to adjust. And maybe, Matteo, that's also because you're talking about exercise and stimulation, maybe there are opportunities to think about your ideas as part of a broader way of treatment and prevention. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Group room 4, were there any discussions in room 4? No. So why don't we just open this up? Let's talk about sort of what are the contexts, what are the things that you need from us as sort of this challenge moves forward, or support structures that we can offer you. A number of you I recognize already from the times you've come back. What are your challenges you're facing that you would like help with?
If I could jump in, I guess.
Absolutely.
I think the thing that, so just for context, by the way, we were room 4 and we can't really talk about what we were talking about. So the thing that we're trying to do, because we're not at a lab anymore. Like we met during our graduate studies, but now we're trying to do stuff outside of that research context. The thing that we're having trouble is like, where do we focus? Because there's like 100 things that are coming our way, like you should do now, like market research. And I mean, of course there's the prototype, but also like business planning and strategy and market research and interviews. And it's just like, I can't do all of that at once. Like, how do we prioritize? Like, is there a roadmap or like a flow chart or something, instead of just like throwing everything into the mix and then trying to like grab things as they catch on fire and like putting it out. And so, yeah, I think that's like our biggest concern right now. It's just a big jumble of things.
Anyone else? So Angela, I hear you. That's exactly, I hear that from both entrepreneurs and early stage and students and lots and lots of people. I will tell you, from my perspective, I face that challenge every single day. Faced with 10, 15 different opportunities, how do you choose? How do you organize? How do you select? And how do you focus? And so that is definitely an area that I think we can at least address or try and address. Sean, do you have any comments on this? I saw you smile.
I also wanted to just be like, welcome to startup or entrepreneurship, whatever you want to say. It's constantly a juggle of strategy and putting out fires that are in front of you. It never really changes. It just, the problems become bigger as you grow and scale. And then you have to deal with team complexities and all of that after you get out of kind of that solopreneur aspect. And then, yeah, it just kind of compounds, but it's really trying to make sure that you have kind of your flags set off in the distance, and then a really good understanding of how to compartmentalize certain aspects of what you're doing and prioritize them based on your strategic plan. And really trying to, if you're at a validation phase, that's the stuff that you need to be focusing on. You need to validate that product. If you're at a conceptual phase, you need to conceptualize what it is that you're going to pitch. You need to make sure that what you're speaking to and what you're speaking about to your audience, when you get to that, next level of qualifying the product itself, you want to make sure you're presenting it well. And so it's really kind of identifying truly what stage you're in. I was, to fault all the time because I thought I was 3 or 4 steps ahead of where I actually was, right? And you always want to be like, that's part of being an entrepreneur. That's part of being somebody that wants to build your own thing, is you want to push that gas pedal and you want to get it to the finish line. And part of that challenge is always thinking that you're maybe a little further ahead, or sorry, Joy's working from home right now. There's a bunch of things that kind of jumped out. I think the other piece is, Joseph, as you kind of alluded to, sorry guys, as you alluded, transitioning from kind of that we need to have more funding to pay us to do the work mentality to we need to justify a revenue stream so that we can actually reinvest in supporting our assumptions or in by. So it's really trying to find what your minimum viable product is, and how do you identify a market that is willing to pay you for that at a small scale, so that even if you have to go out and hustle and you have to be the person that's going out to that client's house and, taking their assessments, and or if it's you and one other partner, what's the smallest scale you can kind of smoke and mirrors this thing to prove people are willing to pay for it, to prove that you can generate a revenue stream off of it, and that you can fund kind of the next step. And at some point you're going to hit that, opportunity tipping point where you can't self-fund anymore. You need to throw some gasoline on this thing. And that's when you start looking at your series investments and what round that's going to be and how you do that. And with, convertible notes and banks and all of that investment garbage that you're going to eventually have to worry about, there's ways that you don't have to even have like a valuation on your business today to get some funding to kind of drive that momentum up. And then just quickly to touch on Andrew's, it fixes everybody who has a neck issue. 100%. My product, I had kind of the exact same notion on it, but it's so much easier to say you one person with this very specific neck injury, I can fix you, because there's 100 of you that I need to sell to, not a million of everybody. And if you can sell to that one person right away and you can speak to their exact need, you're getting 2 benefits out of it. 1, you're not trying to boil the ocean. And 2, you don't look like snake oil. Because the biggest challenge to a new product is somebody's gonna be like, well, I mean, yeah, he says it works. And yeah, they've got this video saying it works, but mine's a unique this, or everybody's unique in their own opinion, right? Like everybody has just that little extra pain than somebody else, or everybody. So if you can speak directly to, maybe do a little bit of like, what's the biggest segment in your market, right? Like, so if neck injury is your like solution to people who have neck injuries, what's the biggest population base within that segment that you can immediately go after, build all your material around, target them, fix that one problem, because then all of them are going to validate your product really, really quickly. You're going to get a really big uptick. And then you're going to be like, now we can also do you guys. And here's all the people saying it works. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Joseph.
I'm going to challenge you directly, Sean. It could be the biggest, or it could be the deepest. So this is where the needs and an analysis comes in. Maybe it's not the biggest, but it's the market segment that has the deepest need or the strongest need. So they're more willing to jump on board faster than the ones that are the bigger.
Yeah, find the bluest ocean for sure. And like find the people that aren't being addressed with any other solutions. And absolutely, maybe it's not the biggest one, but it's the biggest one who aren't, given a solution to this current date, because then you're not even competing, which again creates its own challenge of educating a market on your solution, which is very expensive, as again, something I had to do, but you're not competing with anyone else. So you get to dictate what that market looks like, which is also very advantageous.
Angela?
Yeah, I think that touched on all four, hopefully.
First, market advantage. Angela, did that also address some of your comments or questions?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. Yeah, I know the startup life is just, putting, I hear that from everybody who's ever done any entrepreneurship. It's just like it's putting out fires. But the piece about just identifying which stage you're at and addressing that appropriately was useful, especially because that's, I guess, where we're at right now. It's sort of like halfway between prototyping and ideation. So trying to identify where we are with respect to certain things. Yeah, that would be that. Yeah, we'll take that to going forward. Thank you.
And have you guys done like your wireframing? Like, you've worked kind of from end product backwards?
I'm not familiar with the term wireframing.
So like if you have your $1 million idea, if you have your Ferrari kind of built out and you also know kind of where your Ford Pinto is, do you know what pieces kind of come in to fill those gaps to get you from like your MVP product to what your Ferrari offering is, what the differences are between those, so that when you're talking about your product, you can paint the picture of kind of what it could be and what it's going to be and the solutions that it's going to be able to provide, but also speak very, very clearly on what it can do right now. So if you can solve 2 problems right now with your product, yet the product in its whole like completed state down the road solves 10 specific needs, can you fill those gaps? Are you able to clearly kind of explain to somebody who has no idea what you're doing, where you're currently at, where you want to be, and how you're going to kind of fill in those pieces to get there?
Another way of framing that is, what is your product development pipeline? So what might be your minimal viable product that addresses a specific need that someone will buy? And then what other features will you roll out as you build?
Yeah, I mean, we have some idea. There's a lot of things that I think we would have to figure out in terms of like whether it's the things that we envision adding on or making modular or what have you, it's actually viable. But it's not just like a one-stop sort of thing that we're envisioning. So we have some of that, but not in so many words. So maybe that's another thing.
Yeah, and your market's going to dictate pivots as well. Like you may think that your market really, really wants your version 2, and you've kind of built out what that's going to include. And by the time you're done testing your MVP, you may realize that half of what you thought the market wanted, they don't want it all. They actually want this thing over here. And so it'll actually kind of help you kind of develop that roadmap as well as you go through those iteration processes.
Neat. Yeah, thanks so much.
So just looking at the time and sort of involvement. So where we're moving to right now is we're going to be hopefully by the end of the week announcing the 6 projects that will be participating in the open pitch, and judges will award to those 1 or 2 of those people. The judges will award to one of the 6 presentations $5,000 for further development. The audience will be involved in selecting an audience favorite with another $5,000. So the same group might win 10, or 2 groups might win 5 apiece, depending on how that goes. We'll try it out and see what happens. In the interim, we are also going to be looking at those of you that submitted pitches and videos, project ideas on how we can build together some support for you in terms of mentors and experts and moving forward now that we understand what you're looking for. And maybe we will add some additional opportunities for maybe engagement and discussion like we just did right now, because there are some groups that we definitely see that are clustered around certain approaches or interventions. SOARS is a fairly popular one. Different groups are looking from different perspectives, so there may be an opportunity, without sharing your secret sauce or knowledge, but grouping together and seeing if there's something that can be done that's effective together. So those are going to be the next steps. I also want to promote and have you, if you're interested, promote the next workshop is going to be run by Chris with support. So it's the more exciting stuff. Now we've talked a little bit about, trying to find needs, trying to identify problems, trying to identify the context in which you work. But now comes the fun stuff, or what are the opportunities? What are innovations? What are ideas? How do we brainstorm around coming up with different products that meet those requirements within those contexts, et cetera, et cetera. So he gets to do the more fun, interactive stuff, right? I hope I'm not overselling. But join us in a couple of weeks where we're going to actually brainstorm and do stuff. And in the interim, we'll also get back to you on trying to work on your individual projects and where we can match you with some mentorship. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. Because for some reason, 2 workshops are workshop 4. One on the 26th of April and then the 7th of June too. Not too sure.
No.
What reason?
That should be a 5 then, if not a 4. I'll maybe we could double check that.
The first one is opportunities for innovation on April 26th, and then the other one is implementing prototypes June 7th. But they are both workshop. Oh no, this is workshop 6. I'm sorry, I'm too tired.
It's okay. It's okay. So yeah, Sean, that's the other thing is one of the things we will work on is the pacing of how we deploy some of the challenges next round and the workshops. So for example, we haven't actually discussed prototyping or wireframing or Wizard of Oz. So all of those sorts of things are things that we hope to maybe even use some of the workshops from this round to be able to give some video recorded prep material for it on the next round.
Very cool.
So thanks everyone for joining. The goal is spread the word to other people that might be interested. The goal here again is not the pitch. It's not the video. It's not even these workshops. The goal here is how do we get people interested and involved in innovating for people that are living with spinal cord injuries. So as we move forward, it's all about us helping each other and helping others and getting people interested in working through innovation.
Leverage each other's networks as well. All of you are on here. Andrew probably already does it in his accelerator group that he does, but one of the big things is you all have networks amongst yourselves, and now that you're all kind of in the same space with ideas and all of that, there's got to be some kind of cross communications in there somewhere.
So I also want to thank Sean for joining us. So I am so sorry that I didn't introduce you properly, and it is my fault entirely, and I just got caught up so Sean runs a successful business called Universal Access that looks at universal access to space for people with challenges. So I'm sure he can describe his business much better than I can, but what I've only met with him a few times, but what I can say is I meet a lot of people, and it's really, really easy to find people that after a while that know what they're talking about. You can identify them pretty quickly and have experience and knowledge and insights and ability. And so that's, I guess, one of my secret powers. I can usually identify people that are smarter than I am in a room, and he definitely is. So thank you for joining us, but also understand he is a potential great resource and networks, as well as many others that we'll bring on board to discuss your ideas. And thank you, Sean. Before, just in 5 minutes, you thought of things for Sharon's project that I would not have thought of in weeks. So thank you.
Yeah, really kind. Thanks, Joseph. I appreciate it.
So keep in touch, everyone, and see you soon. Keep working on those ideas. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.